It should have been Destiny 3, man. A Destiny 3 would have been so much better. I knew something was up when I was able to log into the launch day of Edge of Fate, right when the servers went live. And there were no server issues whatsoever. That could mean two things for an expansion launch. Either they actually took the time to be prepared for a lot of people logging in and had stable servers from the get-go, or there weren't that many people playing. Yeah, this is Bungie, they're not fixing anything. And so you look at the Steam charts, Lightfall expansion had a peak of like over 300k players, Final Shape expansion last year was just shy of that, and Edge of Fate couldn't even make it to 100k. And honestly, there's a reason for that. I played most of the stuff in the expansion at a leisurely pace, I would say. Beat the campaign solo legendary within 2 sessions, did the exotic mission, explored around Kepler, the new planet patrol zone, and watched the raid race. Haven't done the raid yet, not really a raider because I don't have many friends. And it didn't feel enough as an expansion launch. The story itself was alright for me. It's a whole new saga that is set around the 9, and since it's really hard to know the story for Destiny since you can't even play from the start to the end in its current form, I really only know the bare basics of it. But it's enough to do the first encounter of Sunder Doctrine, and at least for me, there were a lot of characters in this new expansion. I know the 9 has 9 people in it, but it was really hard for me to keep track of essentially each individual person of the 9 since each of them had different syntax, different personality, and whatnot. It would have been better if there was a face or visual representation that was associated with each member for my goldfish memory. Other than that, Orin was pretty cool until she put her armor on. She needs to expose those grippers again. And Lodi is pretty cool. For an ordinary guy doing ordinary things, it really shows how extraordinary the Destiny universe is. And those two characters is a leap in the right direction compared to whatever disaster Lightfall was. But again, in terms of the story content, if they showed or portrayed each of the 9's members' individuality more, it would have been a lot easier to consume. But I think in general, it was pretty decent, and a lot of people in the community liked it, so no major complaints there. The way it told the story, however, was not good. One positive thing they did with this expansion is have these little like text bubbles like it's a traditional RPG. These are obviously not voice acted, but allows the devs to put in more context and more lore without the need to go through like the whole process of getting it voice acted, rigging models, and all that. I think it will be weird at first for many of us, but I think the end result is good as it's just more stuff, and we need more stuff. Everything else was bad. The Matter Spark, the way you run around as a ball constantly, was bad. Sometimes the game sends you to a literal random location for the sole reason to have time to say all the voice lines. The Matter Spark visual effects and the weird spin it does was really annoying. The puzzles and mechanics weren't all that great. Looking for Matter Spark holes was a nightmare. And really just both the Relocator and Matter Spark made me very lost in the puzzles. The other one was like the Strand Suspend thing, I forgot the name. It was alright, and was the only good tool. Bungie was trying something new by making Kepler into like a Metroidvania experience. Now, I'm not here telling you that I'm an expert master degree in the art and gameplay of Metroidvania. In fact, I haven't even played Metroid itself, but from beating Prince of Persia Lost Crown and playing through a good chunk of Hollow Knight, I know what made those games fun. It's the realization of getting these new tools and abilities that change the way you platform, change the way you explore, and change the way you fight. You get a double jump, you can now get to higher places, you can now jump over your foes and do like a ground pound or whatever. You unlock a dash, you can now cross over gaps, close the distance down towards enemies. When you unlock one small thing, it has many different useful outcomes in all aspects of the game. Being able to turn into a ball was only used for going into holes. Using a locator was only used for crossing predetermined gaps. The Strand Suspend was the only decent one, but even then we already have a Shackle Grenade in our Strand subclass, so it can be a redundant ability if you already have it equipped. And what benefits from those other Metroidvanias, or at least the 2 I played, they have different biomes with a lot of areas that wants to be explored. Nothing in Kepler piqued my interest, and in fact, Kepler has to be the most boring and dull-looking destination yet. Everything looks exactly the same, which probably doesn't help me with getting lost and disoriented easily when everything looks the same. I think it's easy to say nothing tops the Pale Heart. Neomuna, even though Lightfall sucked, is a cool destination. Savathun's Throne World is cool. Even Europa's a cool looking planet. Kepler gotta be down there with, I don't know, Io? I I don't really remember Io, but it's ugly. And so when you try to go for like a Metroidvania type of planet, it's gotta be a cool planet to want to explore. After beating the campaign with my hunter, I couldn't do it again with like my Warlock and Titan. I had no problem doing Pale Heart, Neo Moon, and Southern's Throne World all over again, but Kepler, that $20 campaign skip looks very tempting. I'll think about it. Maybe they did that on purpose. And in terms of new content, it doesn't feel like there's much released in this. I was kind of expecting like some sort of like new activity or weapons or really just anything after the raid race, but there was nothing. Lightfall had like the extra strand fragments after the first clear, maybe an exotic mission, I'm not really sure, I forgot. Final Shape had like the Excision mission after the raid race, but with Edge of Fate, nothing. Maybe all of Fate has been edged out or something, but it was very disappointing. The only thing to do was more of the portal. I hate this portal. It's just a streamlined activity picker thing that has nothing in it. The bare minimum for me was every activity, and I mean every available activity could be played through the portal. No way the only pinnacle missions are Encore, Kel's Fall, Starcross, and The Whisper. That's it? Missions that we've already done many times, and we have only select few to pick from to get current day gear? That is boring and lazy. In fact, none of the dungeons and raids are not even anywhere on this list. Does that mean they're not endgame activities you can do now? Or is it an excuse for them to just do another revamp update and call it new content by just adding a new perk to the same gun in the same dungeon? It's just lazy. If there were new pinnacle missions, new solo missions, new fire team missions, that's one thing. But there's no new things in the portal, and you're reduced to only picking like 3 things to do out of the bajillion things in the game that now doesn't matter anymore. In fact, it seems that they're sunsetting the destinations map. Yes, the map where you see all the planets and pick where you want to go. There's like a filter over the entire map that makes it look more, I don't know, more dim and depressing. Ironic that after saving the Traveler is less glowy. Kepler isn't even on this map. If you want to travel to Kepler, you have to open the portal. Terrible. Should have been at least on the destination map. But I guess nothing here really matters anymore, which is really sad if you think about it. The main sandbox changes are now more streamlined. If you use a curated list of exotics and the current season gear, then you just straight up just deal more damage or have more damage resistance. Not because of the gear itself, but because of where the gear came from. Now, is this a form of racism? Probably, and for Bungie that has a, I would say, progressive mindset, that's not very thoughtful of them. And so it sucks having this solar bow that I got from whatever season it's from, like Season of the Seraph, I think, being outclassed by literally the same bow, but cooler, and just does more damage only because this new bow came out this season. I think that's kind of lazy and kind of makes every past gear kind of irrelevant. Another thing I noticed in this expansion is that leveling also is kind of useless. Yes, leveling up is kind of pointless in this looter shooter game. Can you believe it? There's been a lot of people, maybe the hardcores mostly, but there are people that want this game to be challenging. And Bungie has attempted to add challenging piece of content, but people are still not satisfied. So now Bungie has this feature called like Power Delta in almost every single piece of content. What does that mean? Well, depending on the difficulty of the activity you're doing, the game will artificially make your level lower than the enemy. So dungeons and raids are now at a -10 delta, meaning whatever level you are, you will be at -10. If your gear power level is 200, you will be at 190 and the combatants are at 200 for the raid. If you're at floor level 10, you will be at 0 and the combatants will be at 10. So essentially, these endgame pieces of content are the same for everyone. I didn't really notice how bad it was until I was able to clear a Nightfall with 2 randoms in 9 minutes on day 1 of the expansion. I think Nightfalls previously, you had to be like, what was it, like hard cap, I think? So like that would be equivalent to maybe around like power level 200 with this new system, maybe lower. But I was at a power level 40. I had a teammate at 50, and the other, I'm not even joking, he was like 11. And we cleared Battleground Moon Nightfall in like 9 minutes. It's a joke. I don't like the direction this is going. It makes leveling not important unless you're going for the current seasonal gear. because those ones give you a higher damage output artificially depending on its tier. And so if I'm reading this right, tier 1 guns of the current season gives you 2% damage boost, tier 2 gives 4%, and tier 5 gives a 10% damage boost. Oh jeez. And so if you really want to level up, you have to go get like the small curated loot pool from a small curated activity pool to get a small real increase of power. It's horrific. Only good thing they did with the sandbox is new armor set bonuses. They just need to add like more armor sets that do better things in my opinion. And also they need to make the stat distribution how it was before. The new system with like the stat distribution, it's terrible. Apparently with this new system, you can't spec into weapons and super stat points, so if you happen to have an old piece of gear that was skewed into both weapons and super, congratulations, you got the rare limited edition hollow full art. You better not dismantle that. That is one of a kind. And I also have to point out the amount of bugs in this game. I knew there was going to be bugs since they're rehauling a lot of things, but holy. At least based off launch of the expansion, there's no hit markers, you get soft locked in Prophecy and Duality Dungeon, no audio for PlayStation, Salvation's Edge Verity encounter doesn't work, you crash when you load into Vaults of Glass or King's Fall, rally flags don't give full ammo and ability sometimes, health stat on armor is bugged, sprint bug, some guns fire slower, and there's so much more than that. It's really a disaster. You could blame the higher-ups for laying off the QA team or whatever, but the blame is still on Bungie. The raid race was hard to watch as people constantly didn't know if they ran into a bug or if it was part of the mechanic. And they had to constantly reload the instance by going into orbit and loading back in constantly. Not to mention the amount of cheaters that did the contest clears. I forgot what the number was, but it was like half the people in the top 100 clears of the raid were cheaters. Like, this is going down to COD and Apex levels of just unplayability. Look, Edge of Fate is supposed to be a new saga, a new start for Destiny 2, but you have to at least have a good start. I know Destiny 1 and the start of Destiny 2 had rough starts, but come on. Like this? The general sentiment from a lot of people, including me, were that my expectations were kind of low already, and it somehow was not even met. I never expected this to be as good as Final Shape or Witch Queen, but I sure do hope it was better than Lightfall. And honestly, I think Lightfall so far is better than Edge of Fate. Sure, Lightfall had terrible campaign, but the gameplay, new guns, loadouts, strand, multiple exotic weapons, multiple exotic armor pieces, a cool looking patrol zone. Like, gameplay aspect and even sandbox aspect, Lightfall was good. It was just the story content and storytelling that was really, really bad. Edge of Fate, however, is the complete opposite. The story content was decent, but the sandbox changes. The amount of bugs, no reason to level, no freedom of choice in the activity you want to do, limited armor rolls, ugly patrol zone, Matter Spark sucks balls. Metroidvania style didn't work, no new boss-like enemies, it was just underwhelming when we were promised a new, exciting start to the saga. The Rite of Nine's redundancy was a clear telling of how this new saga was going to be like, and it's not going to be fun. I mean, I might try the raid, get the armor set, maybe, but I'm pretty much tapped out at this point. I didn't get the Ultimate Edition because I wasn't sure if I was going to even play this and the next expansion, but now, even though Renegades is supposedly a Star Wars theme, I don't even want to know if I want to torture myself with that. I'll only play it if it has lightsabers with eager edge, but right now, I don't think I want my fate to be edged anymore. That'll do it for me for today. Make sure to like and subscribe as my goal is to get to 500 subs by the end of the month. I hope you guys have a great rest of the day, and I appreciate you guys for watching.